Hello, friends. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. I am so sorry that I can't be there in person. I want to firstly thank your hardworking president, Jennifer Carr, for the opportunity to speak with you today. Jen has a critical role representing you on our Canadian Council of the CLC. It sets the strategic direction for the CLC priorities, and I very much appreciate her input. I am sure that you've seen what recently went down in Ontario around Bill 28. Many of you stood in solidarity and in support of CUPE education workers in Ontario. And thanks to the amazing turnout and the incredibly loud voices telling the Doug Ford government that workers in Ontario won't be bullied, we won. We won the repeal of Bill 28, the most anti-union legislation that sought to impose a full collective agreement, as well as to impose preemptive back-to-work legislation. On top of that, it sought to use the notwithstanding clause in our Constitution to stomp on our right to free and fair collective bargaining. The labor movement pushed the government back to the table to bargain with CUPE education workers, as they should have been doing all along. We showed Doug Ford and any other politician in Canada who might want to borrow from his playbook that workers won't be backed into a corner, that workers are fed up with governments and with employers trying to impose unfair wages and subpar working conditions. My friends, that is the power of solidarity. That is what solidarity looks like. Hundreds of thousands of workers from all sectors, from every part of this country, coming together in one united voice and saying, no way. But that doesn't mean that it's time to take our foot off the pedal. In fact, quite the opposite is now true. Now is the time to ramp up our efforts to push for better for all workers. The next challenge is to ensure that anti-scab legislation is introduced, passed, and enacted. You may recall that the federal NDP ensured that in the Supply and Confidence Agreement, which they finalized this past spring with the federal Liberal government, that it included anti-scab legislation for federally regulated workplaces. Our federal government recently announced the start of a consultation process to develop legislation to ban the use of scabs. The labor movement will be actively participating and watching the development of the legislation to ensure that it is comprehensive and that it accomplishes what we need it to do. And that is, of course, to level the playing field at the bargaining table so that workers can push for the best collective agreements possible. But my friends, we have other ongoing challenges facing workers, like those working in healthcare. You represent thousands of healthcare workers, many of whom work in extremely isolated communities across Canada. Healthcare workers have been sounding the alarm for ages about the severe impacts of chronic underfunding and understaffing, and the serious lack of supports for workers in general. They face increasing incidents of harassment and violence in the workplace, along with health risks associated with working on the front lines. Healthcare workers are burning out at alarming rates, and they deserve better. Our governments need to protect our public healthcare system by listening to care workers and by investing to end the care crisis in Canada. We know that the federal and provincial governments must work together to ensure that the money that is earmarked for health services actually funds our public system, funding to alleviate staffing shortages, to shorten wait times, to allow our world-class healthcare workers to provide the level of care that they so desperately want to provide in our communities. We saw what we can accomplish when we stand together, united, demanding better. So let's push forward, arm in arm, and tell decision makers and employers across Canada that the status quo is not nearly good enough. Let's take up every inch of space that we can in one strong, united voice and demand better for workers across this country. You are a strong and dedicated group of union activists who always show up when we need you, and we need you now. So thank you for all of the work that you do standing up for workers in this country. Together, we will accomplish great things. And let's kick some ass for the working class. Thank you, my friends. Solidarity.